Plug on
Yes.
in. All right, Robert O'Dean, who do we have with us today, my friend?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long time coming. This young man, I remember as a middle school kid walking from one part of San Diego to the other part of San Diego to go see the San Diego State University Aztecs run. And lo and behold, 50, 40 something years later, I end up being a track coach from influential people like this who they didn't know it, but they were inspiring me. They were giving me something to dream for and look forward to. So, ladies and gentlemen, this man is a former 100 and 200 meter record holder, and he matriculated at the University of San Diego State University, the one and only Mr. Steve Williams. Welcome to the Wake Up Morning Show.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be with you this morning. I'm out here in San Francisco.
Yeah, he's on the Cali, but you're not originally from California, right?
I'm a native New Yorker. I'm from the Bronx, Bronx forever.
All right, all right. Well, I just want to ask a question. I'm gonna start off with a question.
Start off with a question, brother.
Has anybody ever said that you look like you'd be the cousin to Steve Harvey?
Well, let me give you a story. Being that I'm older and I was more well known than Steve Harvey, and Steve is from New York also, people used to tell him that he resembled me back when he was just coming up. So I can't escape the family resemblance. I wish I was cashing his checks. Okay.
I know that's right.
Yeah, yes,
I
yes,
know
yes.
that's right. Me too.
It's funny to put things into perspective.
Yeah.
I'm saying, look,
They
what
might be
came first, the
brothers.
cart or the horse? And what you saying, look, the horse came before that old cart. That this.
Yes.
But when people say that, I say, you know what? He looks like me. Check it
Yes.
out.
There you go.
That's right.
There you go.
Steve, we are just so excited to have you. Like I said, I'm introducing you. I remember coming to the Aztec Invitational, which I'm active with even now, and you were running against a sprinter who had just went to the Olympics named Sam Grady from the University of Tennessee, and you beat him that day.
I was so blessed to finally wind up in San Diego at San Diego State. I went to University of Texas El Paso first, and then I transferred to San Diego, and I fell in love with San Diego immediately. I fell in love with the university and just the freeness and the openness of being in California. So it was a big thing. I My reputation grew dramatically as soon as I got to California, just from the good vibes and the spiritualness, of the area.
So tell me, when you came to San Diego, where did you gravitate first? If you were to talk about some of the most memorable moments or places in San Diego, what would that be?
Well, I was very fortunate that when I got to San Diego, the great Olympic champion Arnie Robinson was there.
Yes, sir.
The great intermediate hurdler Wes Williams was there,
Yes, sir.
and they mentored me. Arnie
Mhm.
took me in the gym, taught me how to have explosive lifting. Uh, Wes Williams took me to the beach, Mission Beach,
Hmm.
and then of course a little scandalous Black Beach, and then they took
Watch
me
out now. Watch
to.
out.
I wound up getting very close with Mickey Tyler
Oh, the legend.
and his missiles and the Lincoln High School guys who were, I was young, I was like 19, and
Hmm.
so it was just the gravitation to being around the high school. But Mickey Tyler really moved me into the San Diego track world.
Yes, you've said some really major names. I started getting chill bumps actually. Wes Williams is now the sprint coach at Mesa College, and he was formerly the sprint coach and hurdles coach at Cal State San Marcos. One of my mentors as well, because I'm a Lincoln alumni. And you mentioned so many great names, and people don't know it, but Shakari Richardson's coach, and who just coached Melissa Jefferson to the USA title in the 100 meters, Dennis Mitchell lived in San Diego while his dad was in the military, and he too was coached and guided by the Mickey Tyler, Audrey Mickey Tyler Patterson, and she was the first African American to win a medal. Now, Alice Cockman was the first one to win a gold, but Mickey Tyler was the first to win a medal, a bronze, in the 200 meters. So,
And she was a baby. She was young, I
yes,
think, just like my other sweetheart down there, Jackie Thompson.
come on.
You know, baby face
Yep.
up there at 16 in the Olympics.
Hmm.
Jackie and I traveled the world together. Some of my greatest moments, competitive moments, I could look over and see Jackie screaming and hollering, for my success. So, like I said, San Diego was a beautiful experience for me. And as I said, you couldn't have had better mentors than Arnie Robinson and Wes Williams. There were no better guys on the planet. God rest his soul, Arnie Robinson.
Let me ask you this: growing up and coming from New York, what were the things that were when you came to San Diego were cultural shocks for you?
Well, the cultural shock, I had already experienced such a big one when I went to the University of Texas, El Paso, coming straight out the Bronx. Now, that was culture shock. I woke up in San Diego, in an El Paso dormitory, looking at desert with a cross looking like Boot Hill outside my dormitory. So that was tough. But San Diego, as far as the culture shock, was such a soft landing. New York, the Bronx was rough. Okay, I grew up 100, less than 100 yards away from the projects, one of the biggest, well-known, crime-infested projects in New York, Edenwald Projects. So San Diego was just a soft landing, really. I had developed I had no connection to, it was the hippie age in the 1973. So the relationship with white people, right, uh, grew exponentially when I came to California.
Yeah, because we're kind of a melting pot. You have Filipinos, you have Hispanics. San Diego is a wonderful place in that it's a clean city. The crime is low for how big it is, and there's just so many diversities of people. So you would definitely were in for a different experience than in New York.
Yes, I was.
How did you get here? Did you transfer because San Diego State recruited you? How did you do that? Because these days the transfer portal is the big deal, but back then there wasn't no transfer portal.
Oh my goodness, the way the NC2A has changed. And if you read in my book Always Speeding, which is on Amazon, I discussed how I got to San Diego. When I transferred out of University of Texas, El Paso, USC was trying to recruit me and my other good friend and track brother, Harold Williams. And when we were up at USC, they were getting ready to recruit us there. And UCLA's coach blocked Harold Williams and myself from going to USC because they were afraid what the two of us would do to the sprint power dynamic in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Coach Dick Hill became one of the first black head coaches for a major university.
Yes, sir.
And so Dick Hill recruited us and said, come on down from LA. And he literally saved us because we were just in between semesters. And so that's how I got down to San Diego.
And Coach Hill is a legend. He had you all. People don't know it. San Diego State doesn't any longer have a men's team because of Title IX and the football scholarships and the basketball and all that. But he was a gentleman who built a powerhouse. San Diego State men's team for years were top 10, and you guys were beating the USCs and UCLAs and LSUs.
We
With
made a point of it.
Yes, with you, Andre Freeman, and Kevin Shields, and Wes Williams, and King, James King.
James King
It's
and
just so
Harold
many.
Williams, and
Right.
Jimmy Red in the quarter mile. We had quite and my other serious brother Don Tyler, DT.
Mhm.
He was a San Diego guy also. So we had a powerhouse team. Dick Hill had coached Bob Hayes,
Ooh.
Bullet Bob Hayes. Dick Hill had coached Rod Milburn. So Dick was an exceptional sprint coach. We had we had difficulties because the amateur system sort of rubbed up against the NC2A system. And at the time, which is still the same battle they're having now, about money. You know, I was world record holder in 100 yards during my redshirt year. I was number one in the world, 100 and 200 during my redshirt year at San Diego. And I was national champion at 100 and 200, 220 yards at my redshirt year. So when it came for me to run for the university the following year, you know, I had a lot of credentials, and I had a lot of people trying to, you know, pay me to run on different events, and I had to work it out with Dick Hill, and we eventually worked it out where we had a compatible relationship.
Now, let me ask you this question. This is a little rumor. You know, I love to ask rumors.
Oh, Lord.
And so this rumor has it that you got into track because in your rough neighborhood they was trying to get at you, but they never could catch you. And so because of that, everybody said you should go on track because can't nobody catch
Can't
you.
nobody touch you.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a lot of running was going on in the Bronx. Let me tell you, not only me.
Right.
Okay. All right. I attribute some of my competitiveness in the sprints from my Bronx upbringing. It was no rumor. It was like you went to kindergarten, and I was on kindergarten in the projects, and the roughneck kids in kindergarten, I'm talking about 7 and 8 years old, they wound up becoming gang leaders.
Yes.
And the only thing that saved me was that I was faster than some of the gang leaders
Right.
when we were in kindergarten.
Uh,
When they grew up to be the gang leaders, they used to say, "Oh man, I remember this Steve. He's skinny, but he's fast." So
Right.
you're right. The rough upbringing, you know, it made a difference. It made a difference,
Right.
you know. And I was just recently watching the national
Me
championship
too.
controversy where, you know, between Kung Fu Kenny, and Noah, and you know him looking around. Now I posted the amount of times I was looking around in races, and I was embarrassed how many times I had done it. But it was that Bronx competitiveness. You know, people don't understand. You're dealing with nanoseconds when you're running 100,
Yes.
and five meters from the tape, 5 meters from the finish line, it's not over.
Right.
Things can fall into that almost spiritually godly dimension where everything slows down. And so for me to laugh and see the little friction at the end of the race, you know, that's good for the sport.
Right.
People say sometimes it's unsportsmanlike, but we're not playing chess, you know. You know, we're in a competitive event, and emotions will get to you. And it's just interesting that the competitive nature of the sport, you know, led me through my whole life.
And they're fighting for money. People don't get it. These professional athletes, there's not money like football and basketball and baseball. Every penny you have to earn it in track and field. So that little rivalry is good, and they're battling for supremacy, like in any other thing in life.
In my book, I mentioned I was literally the first athlete to turn himself really pro. I did depart from San Diego State a bit early, even though I stayed for graduation and continued. But the sport, the amateur, the scamateur nature of the sport, finally the NC2A is doing something. You know, you've got guys that are Olympic champions over the decades that have nothing, that don't even have the love of their country.
Come on.
You know, you've got, you know, great Olympians, world record holders that almost are destitute, even to this day.
Today.
Except for the glamour events, the 100, the 200, a couple of the jumps and the mile, the rest of the people are pretty much shut out. The jumpers, the throwers. I have it in my heart for the throwers. They work so hard and get nothing. They get nothing. They get no support. So as mentioned, The money side of it is difficult. I know Michael Johnson tried to do something with this Grand Slam sport.
Right.
I'm proud of him for the effort. The difficulties in raising that kind of capital for track was monumental, and I hope they work it out. I hope whatever happened with the money not being there, I hope it gets worked out one way or the other.
Me too, because it's important for the sport. And you were talking about just the whole political side of track and field. And why didn't you guys start a union years ago? I know Tyrese Washington, the 400 champion, was trying to do it years ago, and people were afraid to do it. And he's like, "You guys, let's come together. Without us, there is no USA track and field." And Max Siegel, who is the over USA Track and Field, he came out of gospel music. He was the lawyer and attorney for Fred Hammond and other gospel artists. Then he went to NASCAR and started the minority drivers, and they're doing really well. We're starting to see a lot of drivers winning that are minorities. But then we hired him. That dude makes $3 million. He's a black Jew. He has money. He was born into money, but he's making $3 million. And our athletes, top premier athletes, have to work jobs, and they're representing the red, white, and blue, and we all waving our flags when they win at the Olympics and the World Championships, but they're working, slaving to follow their dream. I think it's a travesty, and something needs to be done, because these young people and middle-aged people are wearing themselves out and then have to train and travel on their own, and the shoe companies like the Nikes, they give some money, but others they'll just give the uniform to.
You put me on the spot about Max. I knew Max when he was with NASCAR. I knew Max when he was with Dale Earnhardt.
Yep.
I knew Max. Thank goodness you mentioned the gospel singer Hammond, because they were up in Detroit, and
Yep.
they were Max was working with the gospel singers. They had a studio
Yep.
that was promoting some of the great, because Hammond was like the king back then
Yeah.
as far as gospel music, right? And they had a studio and everything. So you're absolutely right. Max came from the gospel world, and it's a business, and he had to look out for his own business interests, but it's kind of lopsided.
Yes.
Always been lopsided at the top. Former AAU director Olin Castle was robbing us blind.
Wow.
He was robbing us blind. This amateur thing, every time a penny would come to an athlete, the former head of track and field, he'd have his hand out for everything. He'd cut side deals. I represented myself. I was the only athlete that represented myself. I negotiated with 15 meat promoters on almost every continent except Antarctica.
Wow.
I negotiated with Australian meat promoters, African meat promoters. I was in China in '78, South American, Caribbean. So I knew the interworkings of it, and I had the performances. I literally had control of the event. The people that came before me, Bob Hayes, Jim Hines, who passed away recently, who I love with all my heart. These guys were great sprinters, Tommy Smith and
Yes.
John Carlos,
Speed
that
City.
got shut out of the game because of the Olympic protest. And thank goodness those guys was out, because even with my confidence, running Tommy Smith and Carlos would have been challenging at those times.
Right.
So none of them had control of the event. They didn't represent themselves. I negotiated with the owners of Adidas and Puma. In my book, I've got incredible stories of the shoe battle with the Adidas and Puma, who were brothers.
They're brothers.
If you know the history,
They're brothers.
they were brothers. And I bounced in between them, playing one against the other. And I had the most expensive one-time 100 meters at the World Cup Championship, where I got $30,000 for 100 race. Not heats, not finals, just one race. Wow. How did that happen? You sort of need to read the book, but pretty much it was, I used to say outrageous stuff in negotiations. I used to go there and say, okay, you give me $3,000, and if I don't win, you don't give me any. I used to make bets with the meat promoters, with the shoe companies. The owner of Puma got a little drunk in a bar before the World Cup championship, and I pretty much snookered him into paying $30,000 for this one race. I don't even, in my book, I tell you how I had to fly back to Germany 3 months later to collect it. So I had the behind the scenes on every aspect of the event, the meat promoters, the shoe companies. Uh, I brought an Italian company into Track and Field USA that wound up being the national sponsor, Roba de Copper. I was one of the first athletes with their parent company.
Wow.
So my book really goes into, I almost lament in my book how the book was so complicated. The race was only 10, 9 seconds, 19 seconds, 20 seconds. But the behind the scenes, the before, the afters of it, nobody has that story because I was representing myself.
So this book that you have, how long has the book been out? And I believe it's on Amazon, right?
It's on Amazon. It's been out less than a month. Less than a month. It was a labor of love. I was more concerned about getting the story out. There was something that you said in the beginning of the conversation, and Tyrese Washington was one of a couple of us along the line that knows that it's unity. There's not a sport out here. When I retired, I worked for the New York Jets, a speed coach. I was the coach for the New York Mets. I coached the Houston Oilers. I coached some of the players in San Francisco 49ers.
Wow.
So me being in the organization, the pro organizations, let me know what we already knew before. It's unity. You have to have a unity. I'd be in Europe and four of the sprinters would be all Americans, and I'm the one taking the King Kong amount of money, and I'm saying, guys, if when they call us to the starting line, nobody shows up, they'll be under the stands trying to put money in your pocket just for you to race.
That's right.
And I couldn't get it. I was the pariah. I was I was blackballed. I got in my book about how the owner of Adidas was trying to get me thrown off of relays. I was running in the world championships and I wasn't wearing the team uniform. I broke all the rules trying to get some kind of continuity with the other athletes, but we just wouldn't unify. It's because we are individual athletes. We're out there for that individual glory. So to get minds together and work in unison, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
And it still is, because I remember Sonia Richards Ross was trying to get the people to fight. She said, I make money, because she was one of the premier faces. And none of the other athletes would try to come together. And the person that followed in your footsteps, and I know you were his person that he watched, was Carl Lewis, because when he came into the scene, he was getting big deals, and his whole team, Santa Monica Track Club, them dudes was balling out. And they wouldn't run unless they got paid.
Well, I mentored Edwin Moses. I gave Edwin Moses his first pair of good shoes, 1976, when he had just run 3 good races.
Wow.
Carl Lewis in his book talks about how I gave him all the advice I could. I told Carl you got 3 events, 100, 200, and jumps. Decide which ones you're going to run. If a country has a long jumper, refuse to run long jump unless they pay you big money. Joe Douglas, who's the Santa Monica track coach, I sat with him. I was the one that came before everybody that broke all these rules And I suffered the consequences on a lot of it as far as the organizations were concerned, AAU, TAC, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. But the lack of unity,
Hmm.
the lack of unity. I was making so much money out of the hundred, the guys didn't have any money left in the
Yeah.
event. I would take all the money.
Wow.
Uh, I had it where if it rained and they wouldn't pay the athletes, I'd go in my pocket to pay some of the guys. I was in Jamaica. My first meet in Jamaica, I negotiated with the Prime Minister,
Hmm.
Michael Manley.
Hmm.
They came and pulled me off the track in Jamaica in October 73 because I refused to run the 200 against Don Quarry. And the prime minister said, the people have come from the hills to see you run against our man Don Quarry. The prime minister of Jamaica, Michael Manley, negotiated one of my first competitions in in Jamaica.
What?
So it's and then later on they had a track meet because I had such a big amount that I had negotiated with the prime minister. Every year I came back to Jamaica for 5, 6 years, I wasn't dropping below what the prime minister had agreed upon.
And they're still
Well,
running in Jamaica
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm
and the meat
affectionately.
promoter, one time the meat promoter ran out of money.
What?
And he came to me and said, I got some girls I brought down from Philadelphia. I don't have the money to pay them, Steve. I said, here, man, here's $1,000. Pay them. You can get it back to me later. So there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that nobody knows
Mhm.
that still has not been mimicked to this day. You mentioned Carl Lewis. Carl in his book talked about how, I tried to give him the blueprint. I
Right.
tried to give them all the blueprint.
Right.
Yeah. So let me
I
say
was
that.
upset because I used to train with Wes Williams.
Yes.
Wes would have a nighttime job,
Yep.
work all night, take care of his family, and come to the track and still wear me out in practice. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew if he hadn't been working all night long, that he would have been more superior athlete than he was.
One of the things about this, he keeps saying meat promoters and things of that nature. He's talking about track meat.
Track
You
meets.
know, because everybody was like saying, "Wait a minute, Adidas," and they had a meat sponsor. You
And
know,
they sponsor them even now. You know, they
yeah,
still
no,
have sponsor now.
but it sounds. Some people thought it was meat like beef. You
Like
know what I'm
beef,
saying?
right? Gotcha.
And so I want to make sure we're clear on that. And I'm gonna officially
Absolutely.
start calling you Uncle Steve. Uncle Steve, you've been negotiating deals all your life. You sound like you negotiated from kindergarten all the way to now. Moving forward, we just put the book up, and we're going to ask everybody to
Support.
support it. And the funny thing about it, just listening to you, I almost want to retitle the book "The Great Negotiator." You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Uh, but one of the things about it is, and my question is, are they going to make a movie or a docu series on your life?
I was just happy to be able to get my story in a book. I feel that there are great stories that are out there. Mine is one of them. Whether it's movie worthy, I don't know. But I came through a very interesting era, and where, I came through the early '60s. I'm running around in New York, and my uncle lives in the same building that the Godfather of Harlem, Bumpy Johnson, lived in. My
Mm.
father used to talk with Bumpy Johnson. I used to go hang around the mosque down where when Elijah Muhammad was still alive. I was with almost the Harlem Renaissance kind of thing that was going on in the '60s.
Wow.
I trained at an armory in New York that was the armory for the Harlem Hellfighters, the famous black military regiment from World War II. I trained in the armory with their medals and we even had military equipment in this armory. So I came through a very interesting era. I even remember when Martin Luther King got shot. the Black Panthers had a little facility, a little community center. They used to distribute their literature around the corner from my house. So I was raised in a revolutionary times. More than a negotiator, I was, I had that revolutionary sprinter attitude about what was going on.
Right. Now, my question is, why didn't you go into being an agent like the Ronaldo Nehemiahs and the different people like that? Because he represented at one point, I don't know if he still does, the Allison Felixes and different people like that.
I raised Nehemiah. If you ask him, he'll tell you. I raised Skeets. Skeets was getting ready to leave Puma
Yep.
to go to Adidas. He came to me. I went to the Puma people and begged for them to keep him. I taught Nehemiah. I shared everything I had with the guys. It was a civil rights issue for me to get everybody paid, not just myself.
Right.
The reason I didn't go into being an agent, honestly speaking, the business was too grimy. I didn't want to be up there arguing and taking a percentage of what was already a small amount of money that these athletes needed every penny to live off of.
Wow.
I couldn't I couldn't go and sit up there and argue for this small amount of money and then take a percentage of that. Wow. And I was pretty much tired. I was world class from 1971 to 1983. I was worn out with even being around it. But also, it gave me an international business sense that I went on and did other international businesses. I was in the design teams with Puma and Adidas, where patents were developed from my ideas. Wow. I wound up having an orthopedic patent for my company in the 90s and in parts of the 2000s. And I did international business. And I learned that from the track and field negotiations. And I'd rather use my negotiation skills and my status that I had, I'd rather had used that in business than be fighting over pennies and taking from my track brothers and sisters.
Wow.
It was offensive to me. Some of the top agents, Nehemiah, another guy Campbell, a couple of other guys, I raised them in that business, but I just didn't see that as a business for me. Wow. I was worn out, quite frankly. I was tired. I was tired of the fights. You had to fight. I'll give you a story. I ran 900 meters world record in Siena, Italy. I was the first sprinter to run world record sprint in Europe. My European status was greater than my American status my whole career.
Wow.
And so here it is in Siena. I got an incentive. I'm asking for a couple of thousand regularly, and then I got another 1,000 or so more as an incentive. So I run the world record. The place is crazy. Italians are losing their mind. It's fantastic. We got to line up at night with the other agents to go to the track meet promoter for him to pay us. So, I'm lining up with the agents. I'm the only athlete that's doing his own business. So we walk in the room. I know these guys. They're Italians. I had been here before. So it came down to them paying, by bonus. All of a sudden, nobody speaks English.
Oh, wow.
Nobody speaks English.
Right.
I've been negotiating with these guys for 2 years. All of a sudden, nobody speaks English.
Right.
Got all the other managers and stuff outside clamoring to get in because we're having a rather heated argument. So then they want to count out the money and they want to pay me lira, but they want to misquote the currency value. They're going to say, well, it's 2,000 lira, which was like, $40.
Oh, wow.
So I had battle after battle after battle with each meet promoter. Zurich, Switzerland, I had gotten a Swiss bank account from the meet promoter in Zurich just to be able to handle my out-of-the-country money. Of course, when the governments in the United States said you had to disclose it, I disclosed I had the account, and it was like 20-something years later, so it didn't matter. But the interworkings of the business with the meat promoters, it was tedious. I mean, I used to have to almost hypnotize myself when I got to the starting line because I had the negotiation with the shoe
In your
companies,
mind. Mhm.
the in my mind, the arguing with the meat promoters. I also had quite an extensive social life, as a young man traveling the world. So just to be able to stop everything, and I used to say I had to get in the moment of moments now. I used to have that command to cut all the business stuff out of the way. It was quite challenging. I wish that I could get some of the people that are trying to get the unity in the sport. I would guess they would read my book just to get an
A
idea of
blueprint.
how you have to have unity. You have to have it. You have collective bargaining. I was with the Jets. I was with the New York Jets. They went through four different coaches during my tenure as their speed improvement coach. And I saw what collective bargaining did. I saw what the unity did. And we just don't have it. We just don't have it.
You don't.
Do you see any of the athletes in the past or currently that have unified to the point of being able to impact the sport in the way that you try to do it?
I'm so happy that at least the money has graduated up. When I heard that Usain Bolt, possibly lost $10 million through some financial fraud, I was saying, well, at least he had it to lose.
Right. Right.
Okay. And when I hear that Noah and some of the other athletes, Sha'Carri Richardson's having large shoe contracts, absolutely, it warms my heart. I had a huge contract in 1976, and I got injured, couldn't collect it all. I collected some of it the next year in the World Cup Championship. But the people at the top in the glamour events are going to get paid, and the rest of the athletes are going to suffer. The rest of the ones are going to be underpaid. Nike's big enough to take care of everybody,
Not gonna happen.
but it's not going to happen. Also, you mentioned Max and the United States Track and Field. USA Track and Field's budget is pretty much subsidized by Nike. So their decisions are always going to be slanted toward whatever Nike wants.
And Steve, the what's keeping USATF afloat is youth track and field. There are so many youth track teams around the U.S. with large numbers of children. And remember, everybody pays a fee to be a member. And all these track teams as a whole pay a fee as well. So in my research, track and field is being held up by the youth track and field. And you got the other people in the offices getting the bulk of the money. And I thank God for Allison Felix when she went to the Supreme Court and all that on Nike because she had to hide her pregnancy at first, remember? Because she was the face of track and field. And they took her contract away and because she was having a baby. So she fought and they had to turn it around. So if you're part of Nike under contract and your maternity, they have to take care of you still, which is I think is commendable. You should do that anyway.
Imagine the brutality. Imagine the lack of respect that someone with Allison Felix's resume
Come on.
has to fight about being pregnant, okay? And quite frankly, it's historically speaking that women are stronger runners after pregnancy.
Yes.
What a bad bet that was on Nike. But absolutely, Allison Felix, it's painful.
Yes.
It's painful to go down the list.
Yes.
It's painful. And that we let's talk about you talked about the youth and the fees and the dues that the youth are paying, right? It used to be track clubs. Now there's no track clubs. There's Nike owns everybody. Puma owns who it owns. Adidas owns who it owns. New Balance owns who they own.
Yes.
But New York Pioneer, Philly Pioneer, Pacific Coast Club,
Santa
Santa
Monica,
Monica Track Club. All of that died because the sponsorship took the name of the club off of their
of a
chest
uniform.
and
Hmm.
put Nike.
Yep.
And then you got Nike, who seems to have lost the marketing sense, or at least the sense of what the viewers want to see,
Right.
where they got all the runners wearing a purple uniform. Nike got everybody wearing the same colored uniform.
Yeah.
You watching the race and the sprint race, you can't even tell who won because everybody's wearing the same colored uniform.
Correct.
But that's the dominance that they have over the business. I got a Phil Knight story. 1975, Don Quarry and I, up in Eugene, Oregon, the first Prefontaine meet, we break Tommy Swift's record of 20 seconds. We run 19.9 up in Eugene, Oregon. Quarry ran a great race, outleaned me. It was like you could barely see air between us. And I'm walking, after that meet, I'm walking back to the parking lot. Everybody was in a sad mood because Prefontaine had just died. And a guy runs up behind me with a bag of shoes. And he says, you know, I've got a small company. Will you please come and run for me? And I said, look, I'm with Adidas. I'm making X amount of money. If you can't give X amount of money, then, you know, I can't go with you.
Hmm.
And it was Phil Knight. He walks to his car. He opens up the trunk of his car. He gives me a bag of shoes. And, you know, he didn't have the money to pay me. More than 20 years later,
Nike.
I was in the Nike compound, and I walk up on him. He immediately knows who I am, and I tell the story to. He had his minions around him, and I tell the story, and I say, yeah. You went to your beige-colored Chevy and opened up the trunk of the car to give me the shoes. He didn't dispute any part of the story except my car was gold. It wasn't beige. Men in their cars.
Nike is the business, which is why we have the U.S. Nationals in Oregon all the time, because it was supposed to be in California. Olympic trials were supposed to be at Mount Sac. They redid that track on purpose, and for some kind of reason, they didn't have it there. They had it in Oregon,
Same way they snatched it out of
Sacramento.
Sacramento.
I went to that one. Amazing, the
They
best track
snatched it
meets,
out of Sacramento.
the best
But
track meets.
you can't fault Nike because the system that covers it is that amateur system. And they're only working their power within a system that is already corrupted,
Right.
has been corrupted from the beginning. From the beginning. It was never run as a business. Never. It was never run as a business. It was run as an organization. I was so pleased to see the NC2A finally loosened up some of that money for the kids. It was, I had waited forever to see that, and I was happy to see it. And the concern on whether it will destroy smaller programs as they fight into recruitment of athletes, I look forward to seeing it.
Well, you will see it in 2026 because there is now going to be a cap on how many people could be on the women and men's teams. Like San Diego State is an all women's team, you only can have 45 people, and for the men's 45. So a lot of those top athletes will get a chance to help the mid majors like the San Diego State's track team get good athletes. So it kind of balances itself out. The top heavy USC's, LSU's, Florida's, and Texas will have to let some of those kids go because you only can have 45. So hopefully
Yep.
it'll balance out.
I, when I was placed in a blessing, a major blessing, was when I was placed in San Diego State Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
That was in 2013. And I spoke passionately about how you could have San Diego State that created somebody like me not have a men's team. You know, I couldn't grasp that the school would not have a man's team, but you know, the economics of it all and the structure of the
Title Nine.
NC2A, you know, what can you do?
Right.
Well, with that being said, sir, I think that this is a interview to be continued,
Yes.
but not here on the radio station. I think it should be continued after they read your book. So I'm going to encourage everybody to go out and get his book. I put it up in the feed, so you can go to Amazon. It's called Always Speeding.
Speeding.
You know
Yes.
what I'm saying? I want to put byline, get your hustle on. You know, so you know how to negotiate for yourself in understanding your worth.
Yes.
Yes. So
Gotta fight, brother.
I'm just gonna tease you, Uncle Steve. You something else, man. They gonna get. We gotta keep on spreading the word about
He's the same
what
way.
you are doing, and we thank God that you are still here. You're still teaching. You're still loving on your people. Any final words before we leave?
I I thank God. My mother was Methodist, Butler Methodist Church in the Bronx. She was the director of the choir. My father was an Egyptologist. So I had the spiritual balance that very few have growing up. And as I said, the streets of New York, Black Panthers, the Black Muslims, and all of these things contributed to me having a fire to do what I did athletically. In final words, I want the kids out there to get that fire behind something. Find something you like, you're good at, concentrate on it, right? I would always say that hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard.
Come on.
I always would also say to the kids, never lose the love of running.
Never.
If you lose the love of running, then you're doomed because track is too grueling a sport. I used to train the New York Jets, and for punishment, I'd have to say, guys, go out there and run a half mile. And everybody would grumble, a half mile, half mile, half mile. So that just tells you that how tough track is, that we're the punishment for other sports.
Come on. But we the foundation of them too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, there
Thank
you
you
have it.
for spending this time, letting me have this time with you, and I hope we can do it again.
Without a doubt, man, you have made a dream come true. I have followed you forever, and your name I always kept hearing Steve Williams. Steve Williams, forever. You are a legend for real in San Diego track and field and the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. We are hearing firsthand from the legendary track superstar. We know him as affectionately now Uncle Steve Williams, right here on GOD Radio 1.
.com.